So throughout this session, I'm hoping to make sure we're all on the same page in terms of our understanding of what a CV is, what a resume is, and starting to work on how you morph between these two sectors, these two identities, and consequently the documents that accompany the two. Because I think you're going to find between contract work, between postdocs, between steps in the private sector back to the nonprofit sector into the academic sector again, you're going to be doing this more frequently than perhaps other PhDs coming into the market at other times. So I've got a game plan, but I must tell you, I mean, the game plan has to do with the fact, for whatever reason, academia has morphed into PowerPoint land, and I have all sorts of ambivalent feelings about PowerPoint. At the end of the session, I want us to have time to take a look at the characteristics of CVs, of resumes, to understand how they morph. How we get there and what else we talk about along the way, I'm totally open to. So although I'm talking and I got PowerPoint, think about this more like a seminar and less like a lecture. And although we're taping, when you ask a question, when you make a comment, I'll repeat it because you're not on a mic and I am. So when we put this on the web and people at home are listening to it, they're actually going to be able to hear what the conversation was about. Okay? Now, just before we get started then, how many folks in the room have constructed their own CV? You've done this before. Okay? Hey. How many people in this room have constructed your own resume? You've done that. At some point in your life, you've written a resume. Yeah. How many people have written a resume since they've been in grad school? Okay, so we're looking at most of the room saying they've written a CV. Yep. Most of the room saying that they've written a resume. Less than a third of the room saying that they've written a resume since they threw their hat in the grad school pool. Okay, what this means for most of you is that you've started to at least develop a vocabulary to describe yourself in academic terms. Your vocabulary to describe yourself in non-academic terms has, shall we say, gaps in it, if it exists at all, or it may be outdated, haven't been there for a while. The impact of having a vocabulary to describe yourself is that tends to be how you begin your identity. Okay? So when you're starting to think, okay, I'm graduating in the next year or two, I got to put together a CV, not too sure about the positions in my field, whether I'm going to be able to get one, even the contract stuff is tough right now, maybe I should think about some alternatives, and then people stop, because what alternatives? There's not even words in their mind to describe what those alternatives might be. So ultimately, getting this ball in motion is a linguistic exercise. So even if you're quite committed, tenure track is what it is for you. It's not going to be anything else, but you're going to do tenure. Great. I applaud you. I would certainly never dissuade anybody from doing that, but still take the time to imagine, how would you construct yourself in non-academic terms? Go through the process of actually constructing a resume to get a sense of what that might look like. At the very least, you will enrich the vocabulary you have to describe yourself to other people. But I think you're also going to find you're going to develop an awareness of who you are beyond your role as a grad student, contract faculty, TA, postdoc. There's more to you than that. But without the words to describe that, we tend not to even recognize it exists. Okay? So, CV resume. In your understanding then, what is the difference between a CV and a resume? The way you understand it to be. What is your understanding? Give it a go. Yeah.
I think that the resume is shorter.
The resume is shorter.
And it doesn't necessarily have to include all your academic achievements. I mean, if you've been to 15 conferences, you don't have to put them if you're in the non-academic world.
Right, so it doesn't have to include all your academic references, right? Mm-hmm. Any other differences that come to mind when you think of the difference between a CV and a resume? I'm not going to say right or wrong here. I'm just sort of collecting what is the knowledge base in the room. Yeah?
Resume is more of a list of job accomplishments, and where CV is more of academic accomplishments.
Okay, the resume being more job accomplishments and the CV being more academic accomplishments. Can you think of anything else? Yeah?
Resumes can be organized in different ways. Like they can be sort of descriptive rather than just listing jobs when you worked.
Yeah.
And describe your capabilities and those sorts of things.
Yeah, so resumes could be more descriptive. They get into more detail. Absolutely, absolutely. I've got a few ways of thinking, because I work in words, but I also work in images, so I tend to come up with metaphors that fall into both camps. One of them is the CV rhetorically functioning more like identity through affiliation. Okay? You are not you. You are the sum results of your papers, your teaching experiences, the courses that you've taken, the presentations that you've done, your evaluations, your references. Okay? So you're an accumulation of things about you, but not you. It's negative space description. Your form emerges in the negative space around the activities that you have done in academia. Okay? In a resume, it's kind of the opposite. I think of that as positive space. And I mean negative and positive, not in the emotive sense here. I'm talking about the thing, not the thing. Okay? So one's not good, one's not bad. They're just different. Positive space. In a resume, you're describing you. You're filling in the details. You're putting in bas relief how you are different than the things around you, the people around you. You're highlighting your uniqueness. It's a positive space, negative space dichotomy. Another way of thinking of this in terms of linguistics, perhaps, verb, noun. CVs are about where you went to school, what you took, what you are researching, what you have published, what you have taught, who you have affiliated with. All of these are answered in terms of nouns. Okay? Resume is a verb-oriented document. How did you do this? What was the impact of what you did? So the credentials, the names of things only get you so far. You really have to, the resume is where you're describing the how, the activity, the process behind it. Okay? So that's another way to think of the differences. Now we're talking, simplifying it for the sake of an hour and a half long talk, into these two camps. In a lot of fields, there's some hybridity going on. Okay, so it's not like these are oil and water and are never mixed. In fact, increasingly, we have salad dressing resumes out there. Okay, little bits of both together coming up with a new flavor altogether.